Hey fellas, PV2 Smurf here. PV2 Smurf here. PV2 Smurf here. Oh fellas, PV2 Smurf here. Next fellas, we're going to clean some of our parts before we reinstall them. The most important thing I found about cleaning parts is most of us do not have a parts washer at home. Yeah, you can use soap and water. It'll get most everything off. Be just as safe. Make sure it's cleaned off and stuff. But some of these parts are kind of delicate, and ideas they got a lot of stains on them after a lot of years. Being a 96 model means that we've had it on there a good 20 years, and I've never cleaned it, especially in 20 years. So what we're gonna use is this. Purchase this at a local parts store. They also make stuff called chem cleaner or carburetor cleaner that you can use, but I'm going to use this. The most important thing and difference I see between carb cleaner and this, and I wished I would have got the carb cleaner for this instance, but I didn't. Not that there's any issue with the carb or anything, but on the back of this Gunk's parts washer, and though I'm not sponsored by this product, on the back of it, it clearly says, do not place gaskets, rubber, or plastic parts in solution. So do not submerge your carburetor, anything that's plastic or any of that kind of stuff in here, because my assumption is it will probably eat it away. But what we are going to place in there is things that are not plastic and coated. So my assumption is, since it says no plastic parts in the solution, my idea originally was to just put it inside a bucket, then take the parts, set them in a bucket, leave them in there. And the thing says to lower it in and then allow it to soak for 20 minutes, and you may need to brush some of it. Well, since it only says 20 minutes, I was going to put it in a bucket and clean it like I just said, but what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to agitate this really well by shaking it, and then I'm going to pull the lid off. Now, after opening this, I realize that it already has a basket in it, which is great. Basket's perforated on the bottom here, so this would be really great. We'll be able to drop our parts right down in there, and then just set this back down in there and wait 20 minutes, which is great. In the event that you want to use more than just this, go with a clothes hanger. As you can see here, basket's not very big. This is their intake. These are two pieces that go on the end of our intake. And as you can see, they're pretty dirty. So what I'm going to do is drop this down in here and wait 20 minutes.
Big, this is their intake. These are two pieces that go on the end of the intake. As you can see, they're pretty dirty.
Now we're just going to wait. I was very happy with the rear coupling and it looking dirty for the intake. So I stuck it back in here for another 10 minutes. See what we got now. This is their part before. Here's the part after. Now I think that this cleaner would do much better if it was to sit for probably an hour or so, things in it. Probably get it really clean. Now I did have to use the bristle brush I have right here. Just a little bit to get some of that off, but overall, I think it looks pretty good. So there's still a couple marks right here, but couldn't get it off. But overall, a lot better than what it was originally. I'll call that a win any day. So here is the intake. It's removed. Scrub it down with a brush. As you can see, the swirl marks. So now let's dry it off. Here's the same part, and all I did was dry it off. Look what a difference. Now, this probably did set over 20 minutes. Look at that. Still got some pitting and stuff right here, which, I could clean off if I wanted to, but as long as it seals. But look at that. Look at the difference. And I know it sucks taking time to do small details like this, but these small details are what really, in my opinion, set apart the difference between a DIY and a professional looking job. Because, I mean, look at that. I call that a win. How about you? Now, as you can see, our carburetor is pretty dirty. Now, this is a regular standard CV or constant velocity Harley Davidson carburetor that was factory already on it. So what I'm going to do is take this carburetor, dip this brush, this soft bristle brush, dip it down in there, and then I'm going to just clean outside this carburetor, since we can't submerge it completely. Alright fellas, when it gets time to replace your cylinder head, make sure you reference your manual as seen here. The manual will tell you the stretch limits for the cylinder studs. Okay, so here's one of the old ones, and the whole reason why I'm placing that is because it was actually leaking around the bottom of this one. And I figured it out because I went and take the head bolt out, which right there is one of the new ones. When I went to take one of the head bolts out, it unthreaded, which told me that Loctite, which comes on these from factory on the bottom end on the factory ones down here, had actually come off, and it was allowing the cylinder when the piston would go up, because it sits like this, when the piston itself would go up like that, it was causing it to raise up, come off just a little bit and move, which was letting oil seep out. So I thought, well, had this motorcycle for a while. It's got 30-some thousand miles on it. You know what? Let's just go ahead and just replace all this cylinder head stud, since we're going to replace the base gasket. So I just want to go down the list of parts that I got. I'll link the website to the dealership I bought them at, because these are actually Harley Davidson parts, and I was told to do this by my buddy Mutter. Mutter, if you're watching this, man, I appreciate all the advice along the way. So my buddy Mutter is a certified Harley mechanic. Like, I would stick with stock Harley stuff. Another thing is, I couldn't really find a kit with all these parts that was not stock, that didn't cost $350. So here I am with stock stuff, and I'm thinking it's going to do pretty well. So the first thing I want you to notice is these are the new jug studs, or cylinder studs. Right there's the part number. Now, though there's two bags of them, they're the exact same. There's no difference in them, but they only come, as you can tell right here on this, they only come 4 in each one, and you need 8. Because 4 hold 1 down. We have 2 cylinders, we need 8. The next thing you'll see is there's 2 of these right here, and they both say cylinder head screw. Cylinder head screw. Well, one says chrome here, the other one does not. If you want to take a minute and think, well, why would you not just buy 4 chrome ones a motorcycle, right? Well, no, it's not because I'm a major hater of chrome. It's because these are different sizes, to my knowledge. As you can tell, the length on them. These nice, pretty, shiny ones, they go over by these 4. Go over there by where your spark plug's at, because guess what? You can see that. And another thing is, they set down lower so they can be seen. These things here that are just dull and not chrome, you don't actually see them. And as you can tell by the size, again, they're much longer. They're a tad bit longer than the other ones. So all you need really to do this job is these. You need 4 of these, because there's 4 on one side that you don't see, and then 2 on each side of each spark plug. That makes 4 of them. The part number for these are listed here. Part number for the chrome ones are listed there. And while I was at it, I went in and took my old one out. Went by and got me 2 jam nuts. Mainly because I don't keep standard size nuts and bolts on hand, because as you can tell, we do a lot of Toyota and Nissan and foreign vehicle work, so they use metric. Went by my local dealership. There's the Hillman part number. Picked up me 2 nuts for, I think it was like 90 cents, 98 cents. Picked up me 2 of those, and so what we're going to use is a double nut method to set this on the old screw, double nut it together and pull it out. Above all, my buddy Mutter told me to be sure to use red Loctite. After looking at these new cylinder studs, you look on the bottom of them really good right there. You can see they already have red Loctite on them. However, he suggested I buy and put my own on there. So guess what? He does this every day. He knows I'm going to use that. That's what I'm putting on there. The next thing he said was, I bought this red Loctite stick because I'm worried about losing it or spilling it over and stuff, just like the blue Loctite. Though I'm not sponsored by Loctite, that's the only brand I could find that was red thread locker in a stick like this. He told me to make sure when you put those on the cylinder studs, to make sure you let them set for 24 hours. He said, though it may not be listed, I've had the best results by letting them sit for 24 hours. So put them on there, let them set 24 hours, then go back, set the cylinder on, and reassemble. So that's what we're going to do right now. And I'm going to show you how we're going to use the double nut method, and we're going to put this, take the old one off. Then I'll show you how we're going to fix it, and we're going to put the new one on. Now I know that most of the viewers on my channel are aware of what the double nut method is. However, there's something you got to remember, not everybody's up to par with everybody else. So I'm going to show you what the double nut method is. Though this is just a slow overview of the process or a fast overview of the process, there's more videos that explain it better. This would be your double nut method. So your double nut method is as described. Double nut. We're going to put 2 nuts on this stud right here, and we're going to remove it. Now I might be able to take a pair of channel locks and put on it right there and just twist it off. But to be safe, we're going to double nut it. Just to be safe, because I know it's probably on there pretty tight, because you got to remember that cylinder gets hot, sits, cools down, gets hot, expands, gets cold, shrinks. So it's probably on there pretty good. First thing you're going to need to do is spray the area of penetrating spray around the bottom, so that will loosen it up. Alright, now we have penetrating spray on the bottom, it's sit. Now we're going to use the double nut method. 2 nuts of the same size. What we're going to do is put it on here like this. Thread it on there. I guess it doesn't really matter, but I figure I'm going to need a lot of torques. I'm going to run it about halfway. Take the same nut of the same size. Right down on here. Like this. Then what you want to do is hold the nut, one of the nuts. And then you want to take something else. In my case, I'm going to use these vice grips. Like this, and what you're going to want to do is you tighten this nut down, the bottom nut up, so they tighten against each other, and I'll show you why. This, we're going to give them a good firm tug. As you can see, they're not coming off anywhere. They're on there. Now I could use those channel locks and get it off with, but I won't take a chance to accidentally hit my piston, so I'm not going to. So now what I'm going to do is take my wrench, or you could use channel locks. So we want to thread this, try to turn it off, and when we do, it's going to push against that top one, and the bottom bolt there should come loose. The stud should. And as you can see, it's on there pretty tight. See it? So you want to make sure you don't pull and pry on it, because you don't want it to break here or break down there. Did you hear it come loose? Then you just keep doing that right there and twisting it until the stud comes out. And that is the double nut method. And then we're going to remove all 3 that's left up here. Then we'll reinsert the new ones. Now this is what we're going to do. We'll get out of the pack right here. Put our nut on here. This has been parts washed and clean. You could probably use a new one, but use the old one. Threads on it are good. I run a chaser in it. Like this. And what I want to do is, while it's off and not inside the motorcycle, we're going to double nut tighten these so enough to lock it in. Now the new ones already have some red Loctite on them, as I showed you earlier. And here's another picture. But I'm still going to take this off, put a dab like that on it. Then you want to hand tighten this by hand. The book specifically says, do not use a breaker bar or ratchet to install the studs. These tools will bend the stud and damage it. So do not use a breaker bar or ratchet or any kind of impact to install these into the case, the motorcycle. So after we put a Loctite on it, we'll hand start it and we'll run it in as far as we can by hand. Then all you got to do is, if you like me and you're going to use the old one, these are half inch. Stick your inch on top of it, just go and go and go, and you'll see the red Loctite will smush out of this, and you'll see it push down. Then when it squishes down, go ahead and wipe it off, and I'll show you the finished product. So this is our finished product. You can see they're all installed in there. None of the threads are damaged. They don't look bent. And there was residue that ran out. You can see a little bit right here on this one. And all I done was just wipe it off with a clean rag. Now prior to putting these in, all I had to do was take a brake cleaner with a rag down in here so don't get in the case. Brake cleaner on it. Make sure the gasket, the old gasket and stuff was removed from it since it was flat and smooth without the studs in it. Then I started the studs down in there. You can barely see any remnants of it. That one's our cylinder studs. Now, like I told you, my buddy Mutter said that it's set for 24 hours. Alright fellas, now you can see our cylinder stud have set for 24 hours with Loctite as shown. Now we're going to get the actual cylinder itself. We want to do a couple things with this. If you have a ball hone, they suggest you put it in a torque plate whenever you use the ball hone. I, in my event, are not going to do that. Because of doing this specific job is because this gasket has failed, allowing oil to seep out, which was from a number of things, one being the cylinder head studs were overstretched, as well as probably gasket failure with this gasket. Now, as you can see, the gasket is not very thick, and this is the bottom of the cylinder jug. So as you can see, this gasket is not very thick, and you can see it's peeling away pretty easy. None of it managed to stay on the actual bottom part of the engine. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our time here and we're going to scrape this old one off. If we scrape it off, we're going to make sure we go ahead and clean because you can see grit and stuff back in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use some degreaser and I'm going to take a toothbrush and I'm going to go around through here and just clean all this up. Now in the event that you want to paint your cylinder head or cylinder jug, this would be the ideal time to do it since everything's off and out of the way. You can mask the end of all this stuff off and go ahead and paint it. Now in my event, I was going to put some paint on mine, but I think mine just looks more dirty than anything. So what I plan on doing is just cleaning it really well and just using it as is. The other thing to note too, so some of these and mine is included on so basically it's painted back inside the fins, but on the surface of this fin is smooth. So my assumption would be if you're going to paint this, and though I'm not a paint and body person by no means, I will clean in between all these grooves here and make sure it's good and clean. Dry it, make sure that we drop microfiber towel or compressed air. Then paint every single bit of this. Then to get that smooth finish, this chrome metal finish on it, is you would get a sanding disc block, or not a sanding disc block, you would get a square block and you would just go with the grain just enough to get the paint off before it dried. And that would give you the shine on the end of the fins and will clean the inside of it. Either which way, we're going to start by removing this gasket off here. And what I'm going to do is speed it up so you don't have to watch the entire process. Though I know many of you are going to be very upset that I'm doing this, it's my rig, my call. I'm going to barely use this brand new utility blade, and I'm just going to go around and clean it off. Now, you do not want to push pressure with this if you do go this route, because this is not made of good high strength steel. I believe it's made out of aluminum. I'm not really sure, but I know you don't want to gouge it because then the new one's going to leak and we don't want that. So I'm going to do is just lightly go around this right here, just enough to loosen the gasket up because the gasket's stuck on here pretty good. I'm just going to go real slow, take my time. Now, as you can see, this gasket is completely off there. It's cleaned up, ready for a mating surface. One thing I will add, couldn't scrape it all off, it's on there pretty good. What I ended up doing is taking a Scotch-Brite pad, which would be this one, and a lot of elbow grease. Now, I heard they make a gasket remover spray. I've never used it. I was told by a Mutter that they make some. I don't have any. I also know they make things that go on in your cordless drill that you can actually use for this cylinder head, or not specific for cylinder head, but that will remove gaskets. That's non-abrasive. One thing you don't want to do is continue doing this with a blade of some kind, like a utility blade like this. You definitely don't want to continue doing that and gouge that, because then you're going to have gouges in it and it's definitely going to leak. So a little elbow grease later, and here's our final product of what we got. Now all I'm going to do is just take a toothbrush, a little bit of soapy water, and go around all this and just clean it up. Alright, now with that we got our cylinder jug all good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the valves. I'm going to take the valves out of this because I am going to grind them. And the reason why is not because I have any kind of issue, but while I'm already here, the cylinder head's already off. Let's go ahead and do that. So I managed to rent this tool from a local parts store. And basically it's a valve spring compressor tool, and this is one of the cheaper ones. Yeah, they are higher end ones that you can get, but I figured this one would be sufficient for what I need. A couple of things to remember if you've never done any kind of valves in your life. Number one, most important thing is to make sure you have eyeglasses, safety glasses on. There's two little things, keepers, valve stem holders, different names for them, that are on the top that keep this spring from coming out here and it's under a lot of pressure. In the event you go to use this tool right here and it was one of the keepers was to come out, well, let me tell you what, there's a good chance you're going to lose your eye, and that is not okay. So we want to make sure we wear safety glasses. Number one most important thing. The second thing as I go moving along in this process is, even though this is on this specific one, even though this sits down on here and you put it around here, you still have to worry about these coming off. So as a good rule of thumb, it's good to get a zip tie and just wrap it around here and just zip it. Just in the event this was to come loose, you don't have to worry about it shooting the keepers or the valve spring pieces knockouts. I've heard them called that as well. Worry about them coming out at you yet again. It'll also keep this tool in here and keep you safe, and that's important because we want to be safe while we do this. Yeah, if you don't feel comfortable doing this, you can get somebody else to do it. Another thing is you're going to need a couple of things to do this with. One is a tube of valve grinding compound, or they also call it lapping, L-A-P-P-I-N-G compound. This right here is a popular brand and works very well. Basically, it feels like a little sandpaper, and I'll demonstrate how it's done along the way, but not in great detail. Another thing you'll need is one of these tools. These tools actually go on the bottom of the valve. It's just a piece of wood with a little suction cup on each end. I have seen people, instead of using this right here, they've also took and they'll remove it. They'll run a piece of vacuum line over top of the valve that sits down in here, this valve, and they just take a cordless drill with the lapping compound on it and run it around. Yeah, you can do it that way. I have one of these handy. I'm going to use one of these. However, also remember, your rig, your call. So the first thing we want to do, I know it's kind of dirty, so my assumption was I figured I would take and go ahead and clean all this off, then go about doing that, because I don't worry about debris and contaminants getting down in it after I take all this stuff loose. So first thing you want to do is make sure this thing is clean. As you can tell, mine is definitely not clean, so let's change that. So the way I'm going to go about cleaning this off, unfortunately, this specific one says do not put plastic in it. My idea when I originally bought this was to pour this in a plastic thing so that way I could submerge bigger parts in it. Didn't quite work out that way. I guess I could probably get a bigger metal bucket and pour it in and get a couple of these, but in my case, it's not going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to take a brush, and I'm going to dip it out, put it on, dip it out, put it on it. Then when I get done, I'll take compressed air and I'll blow all of it off, so that way it's as clean as I'll get it, and it'll help get rid of all the other stuff. In the event you don't have any of this, you can always spray some degreaser all the way around this and scrub it really good. Some things I found that you could probably buy and use, but they do clog up easy, is some toothbrushes. Get 4 of these for about $1. Well, exactly $1 is what I paid for these. You could also use a bathroom brush that you use. Make sure it's nylon soft bristles. You don't want to run really stiff bristles over these surfaces here and on the bottom, which is located here. You don't want to run really hard bristle brushes, especially steel, over this or this. One, it'll peel off the paint, and two, you don't want to ruin this mating surface here, which y'all probably already know that. This is my process how I'm going to clean it, but you may have more options than me, so thankful if you're watching this video before you attempt to do that. These are small detailed things that you get in the middle of a project and you're like, shoot, I forgot I have to do that. I have to grab something. So make sure that you're prepared for whichever method you want to use. Alright, so I've actually went ahead and grounded down this first valve right here. This is the smoothness of it. The process is pretty simple. There's other videos on how to do this, so I won't go in any kind of great detail. Basically what you do is you take the valve loose and the springs and everything loose. Mind you now, when using the setup that I use, you do have a high potential for it coming off and it doesn't fit that well. I was able to pull the valve together, then push down on the tool as it was inside there together and pull out the knockouts / keepers in order to get the valve spring off. But to get this valve looking like this, basically what you do is you take the back side of the valve right here, just on the edges. Take that grinding compound here, and you just put a drop of it all the way around the outside of that. And this is real gritty stuff. Just grind it, just put a little bit on the outside of it. Turn the valve, set it back inside the seat like this. And then make sure it's off the ground and seated all the way. Take the tool and it sits down on top of it, and then all you do is you just go back and forth. Back and forth, just like that, and you do that. And I've always been told the best way to tell if it's ground or not is when it's sitting all the way flush down in here. So basically you take a light and you shine a light this way. When you shine a light that way, you should be able to look back in the intake port like this. You shouldn't see any daylight. If you don't see any daylight, then guess what? It's seating properly and you're good to go. Alright, now y'all can see I got this cleaned up. This is the head gasket. Basically get it cleaned. I just took me the red scuff pad and went around it. There's still a few areas that aren't perfect. Hopefully the gasket will be enough to hold it. And if not, take it back off and do it again. Story of our lives, right? When doing a project like this, it's quick to get in a hurry and say, hey, I just want to get back on my bike. I just want to ride it. Or I just want to get back in my rig. I just want to hit the trail. One thing to remember is the small details. Like I keep telling you, take your time, do the small details. You know what I mean? If you're on a time constraint, yeah, you can skip it. But if you have the time or can take the time, do it. As an example, this is the intake. Those are the threads. There were nothing wrong with either one of these threads right here. Here's the bolts that go in it. The bolts are in good shape. However, what I'm going to do is take a thread chaser, and all I'm going to do is run it back inside this hole right here. Not to cut a new thread or because they're boogered up. It's just to clean it out. Small details like this. So when it goes time to put it back together, it goes back together. As I did a little research on this big project, was commonly intake air leaks are very common to happen. So what I've done is just run in that hole there, wipe it off. I'm going to take the other one and do the same thing. Now these thread holes here, in the event you have to retap it or something like that, or 5/16 by 18. And these are coarse thread. See, this one's got a little bit of rust, some dirt in it. I can feel it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that a couple of times in and out. Then I'm going to get my carburetor or brake clean, spray back in these holes here, get them clean. Not only am I going to do that, I'm also going to roll it over to the exhaust. Go on the exhaust side, clean all this up. Make sure I clean where this cork gasket goes in here at, and clean those up. Small details, guys. Small details make or break a project. It does no good to get it all back together because you're in a hurry, and then you got an exhaust leak, or you got an intake leak, and then you got to tinker with it and fiddle with it. Just go ahead and take your time, do it now. You don't got to do it later. Small detail. Hey fellas, I want to appreciate you for tuning in on the video. If I have anything that I missed, could have done a little bit better or whatever, let me know in the comment section below. As always, guys, remember, your rig, your call.